morning. Thank you for attending the Author Spotlight this morning. It's our second of what we hope to be a summer-long series. Our speaker today is Jonathan Harrington. Jonathan, well, let me tell you a minute about the Iowa Writers Workshop. That was the very first fine arts program in writing established in the United States that has pretty much won. Their graduates have won pretty much every major award available in literature, including 17 Pulitzer Prizes. So if you call a graduate of the Iowa Writers Workshop distinguished, it would be an understatement. And here we have one of them. So we're happy about that. Jonathan's written about 15 books. Some of them are available here at the library. He's written a series of called detective novels. Those are fiction, and he has also some nonfiction books, a couple of which are here. Here's one on the essay of nature in Florida, which a much younger man put on the back.
Has changed a bit.
Yeah.
Age 12.
Yeah. And a couple others, although the others are checked out at the moment. So these are the three we have available. And of course, Jonathan has some of his books available as well.
Yeah.
Sure. Okay, Alfonso, I'll talk about the library for a minute, and then we'll get started.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for coming, everybody. My name is Alfonso, and we're very happy for your presence here at the library. I would like to tell you about the different events that we're having during this season of springtime. May is coming, and as well with different fundraisers for the library. So we're having a 2-night getaway raffle at Casa de las Torres. Casa de las Torres is a beautiful remodeled home in Centro, in Merida, and the owner is giving away this 2-night getaway for the members of the library. So we are selling tickets for that. A ticket is for 500 pesos and 3 tickets for 1,000. The administration and the library is open for that sales in case you're interested. And these tickets, in case you win, you can give it away to the person of your choice. And yes, and also another fundraiser we have is this May the 7th at the library. We're having Van Gogh and wine. This is a beautiful event of reduced number of people where we are painting glasses of wine as we taste different wines as well. We're going to have some pairings with some of the beautiful and delicious snacks. And of course, we can take home our hand-painted glasses. So we're also selling tickets here at the library, and we're very, very excited about it. Mother's Day is around the corner, and at the library, we are hosting Children's Day. So in May the 10th, which is Tuesday, we're having the celebration on May the 14th, which will be story time here at the library. You're more than welcome to come to join us with your families. And also, tomorrow, Saturday the 30th, having Children's Day special. So yes, the library will be full of different events. One more time, thank you very much for coming, and enjoy the talk. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alfonso. My name is Jonathan Harrington, and I want to thank you for coming this morning. I can think of no better way to start the day than poetry at 10 o'clock in the morning. Thank you for doing that. Of course, special thanks to Merida English Library, and especially to Karina Manaya, who's our director. There she is out there now, and Scott Vaughn, who's here at the controls, who is very helpful. And well, he set most of this up. He's the technical master here, and he's done a great job of promoting this. We have a modest audience for poetry reading, actually a good audience for poetry reading, but it's also being live streamed on Facebook. It's going to be on YouTube, so there's a much bigger audience out there as well. But you're the ones that are important to me right now. I want to read from a couple of different things today, books, that all are projects, my projects that have all come together more or less at the same time. The first book, 2 of them are translations that I've made. One is a translation of a book originally written in Spanish. The other is a translation of a book originally written in Maya. contemporary mind, a contemporary poet who is alive today. The book written in Spanish by Jose Díaz Bolio. He's no longer with us. He died almost 25 years ago. And the final book is an original, my own poetry, which I'll talk to you about in just a minute. I want to present first Oración Rústica, my translation of this book by Jose Díaz Bolio. Jose Díaz Bolio was born in 1906. Perhaps you've seen the Avenida Jose Díaz Bolio out there in the Colonia, Colonia, Mexico. There's an avenida named after him. There's several statues around town. He's really one of Yucatan's most famous writers. He died in 1998 at the age of 92. He was a scholar of Maya culture, a poet. He wrote guides to the ruins. He wrote essays. He wrote magazine articles, newspaper articles. He did just about everything. In fact, I moved to Merida for the first time in 1984 and lived here for a year. It was quite a different place at that time. It was still a pretty small city. Nothing, this whole northern part of Merida was nothing but scrub at that time. But the very first book I bought when I came to Merida was something by Jose Díaz Bolio. It was a guide to the ruins of Uxmal. I never could have imagined that almost 40 years later I would be translating. So it's an honor. I had the good fortune of meeting his daughter, Doña Margarita Díaz Rubio, who runs a foundation that's a marvelous thing. It's called ProSpan. It's a Centro Cultural ProSpan. It's a library, it's an archive. She has manuscripts of Yucatecan writers. She has a museum dedicated to her father, Jose Díaz Bolio, and it's quite a resource for Yucatecan writers. And she's a very dynamic woman that has all kinds of programs going on all the time. And she is the publisher of the book, of her father's book. The book was written in 1939. And this is a brand new edition in both. There are two books to the new edition. Just came out like last month. One in Spanish, in the original Spanish of Jose Díaz Bolio, and my translation into English. So I want to read a little bit from my translation today. And the book, let me say a little bit first about translation. Translation is a collaboration. In this case, I'm collaborating with somebody who's been passed away almost 25 years ago. But when you're translating something, you're going into the mind of another person. You're going into another culture. You're living, you're getting to know that person very intimately. So I was, the biggest challenge, I would say, of translating is to try to retain the cultural context as much as possible. That's not easy to do. And translation is almost, it's not really quite the word. What you're doing is you're recreating a version in English of a poem originally written in another language. So, yeah, you can translate something. In fact, some of these translation programs have gotten pretty good. However, the subtlety of poetry does not lend itself to that sort of translation. And the way I work is I do a very strict translation of the original text, as close to the text as I can get. And of course I polish that and make sure that everything is the way it should be. And then in the final stages, I have to put that original away. And I have to read this thing and say, does this work in English? And is this English, or is this just some sort of a reproduction of the original? It has to work in English finally. So the final stage of my editing is always making sure it works in English, not just a sort of parroting of the original language. Because you have, the problem with some of these translation programs, those of you who study or speak Spanish, the word order is different, the syntax is different. You can't do it like that. You would have everything backwards. The noun is, the adjective follows the noun in Spanish. Well, we can't do that in English. The adjective comes before the noun. So there are things like that. But you're reading in a very when you're translating something, it's a little bit different from just reading. You're reading something in a very profound way. You're really digging into the text. And that's why I say it's a collaboration. You've gotten to know this person pretty well. This book that I've translated into, I call Praise from the Land, Hacienda San Antonio. Jose Díaz Bolio was a man, he was born in Merida. He loved everything Yucatán, particularly the rural Yucatán, and he spent a lot of time in rural Yucatán, in the villages among Mayan people, and learned their language, and he was just fascinated by everything Mayan. This book, he recreates the life of a Yucatecan campesina, a country person that's living out in the country. And it's written in very simple language. They're what they're called is prose poems. They're very short paragraphs describing the daily life of a person living in a very small place out in the country, in a thatched roof hut. And it deals with very simple things. His hammock, his dog, tortillas, things like that. So let me just jump right into reading some of this, rather than listening to me go on and on. Again, there's one other thing I would like to add. Not only have I translated across this into another culture, in another language. In this case, I've had to enter another era, another epoch. This book was written almost 80 years ago. Surprisingly, now as I said, Merida has changed a great deal in 80 years. The country side has changed a little bit less, but there are certain attitudes, I would say, that are not quite up to the way we look at things today. But which makes it interesting to me. Let me give you some examples, and let me stand up when I read the poem. This one's called Birds. Always paint yourself with birds, my beloved land, always with birds, so that you are brushed by the wing of the cardinal and dressed in the blue dove's attire, and will become music in the voice of the nightingale, so that you may become a colored rebozo in the afternoon sun and trill birdsong at dawn, so that I may walk the right road on the way to my thatched hut among trees woven with fluttering and song, so that you will never cease being you. Always paint yourself with birds, my beloved land, always with birds. You'll notice that I leave Spanish words, and I leave, like rebozo. It's a pretty common word for most of us. It's a scarf, and there is a glossary. But words like that, I not only felt no need to translate, It helps to retain the flavor of the original a little bit more. The same is with many Mayan words. In his English, in his own original Spanish, he leaves quite a few of the words in Mayan for the same reason I do, to retain some of the flavor of the original. This next poem is called Viento de Agua. I chose not to translate that either because it's a little hard to find a word. Viento de Agua is what we felt much of this week. It felt like it was going to rain. You could smell water in the air. The wind began to blow quite hard, and the little tiny droplets of rain began to fall, and you knew, okay, all right, it's going to rain soon. It's called Viento de Agua. If you know the word in English, let me know. The British use something that they say that it's refreshing. That didn't quite work for me. Viento de Agua. The branches of the trees are being whipped, and the coconut palm seems as if it will break. Viento de Agua. Oh, how the chickens run and the whirlwind dances. The leaves have gone crazy and are running out across the fields while the branches stretch out like rebosos tossed by the wind. While the scarecrow of the milpas, spooked parrots, balance themselves on the branches, you run for the patio and take down the clean clothes that are hanging out to dry. This one is called Night. I've left a couple of Mayan words in this. There is a glossary. Xpakay is a Mayan word. I don't know if anybody knows what that means. Xpakay is a mythical figure that appears in almost every culture. It is the beautiful woman with long black hair that sits under a tree, and at night the men cannot resist her, and then, of course, as I said, these are old-fashioned ways of looking at things. The men cannot resist her, and she ends up destroying her life, etc., etc. That's an Xpakay. Night. It seems as if night in my land is like a woman who has just stepped out of her bath and sits down next to me with the freshness of water and her fragrance. I think at times, because I know better way to compare them, that the night of my land is like the long black hair of my muchacha when she has finished washing it. At this moment, she is seated at the entrance of our hut, combing out her hair like the Xpakay. She is seated on a stool, and the whiteness of her huipil is whiter than a tamarind tree flower. Since she has just stepped out of her bath, it seems as if the afternoon has taken on the freshness of the water and her fragrance. Ah, Shun, woman. Ah, Shun, how beautiful night is in my land when the bird of the breeze passes through the branches and the deer come out so that the moon can see them. When the galán de noche flower exudes its aroma over the patio and makes one begin to dream. How beautiful it is to sit and contemplate the sky. How beautiful it is to be here with chin in hand while the night is a woman just stepping out of her bath who comes to sit down beside me. I better move along if we're going to get all of these points. This one is called Pet. In Mayan, that means dog. My dog understands me better than people do. Perhaps without knowing it, he does not betray love because he was born to love. Not like those people in the village who feign love when it suits them. If someone said to me, dogs follow whoever gives them something to eat, I would respond, don't be like those misers in Merida who say that only because you give it food, this dog follows you. Because my dog dances like a whirlwind when he meets me. He runs around my thatched hut and jumps in the patio and barks and barks and barks with pure joy. I wish they could see how he trots in front of me when I go to the meal pump. I wish they could see how he watches over the chickens on the patio at night. I wish they could see him guarding the house when we go to the village. But I know people who are incapable of giving a dog something to eat because their hands and their hearts have dried up. I'll finish Jose Díaz Bolio with this poem so that we can get the other two books. This is called Invocation. It's something we might try if we want to finally get some decent rain here, which we need. Invocation. When the rain does not come, hunger arrives. Then the Maya abandons his village, eats roots in the monte, and falls dead on the road. For this reason, one of ours who is very well read and knows how to write well wrote these words that I repeat here so that they will be known to all. May the bird of liquid wings come. May the young blood of the earth come forth. May the honey that the roots clamor for come. May the gift for the corn come down. May the breath of new life come down. May the sap that chases away hunger come down. May the rain come down. May the bride of happiness come. May the soother of the fiery sun come. May the enemy of misery come. May it come down through the path of the stars. May it escape from the womb of the clouds. May the rainbow shepherd it with his longbow. May the tamarind flower receive it. Yes, may the rain come down. May the female caretaker of the henequen come. May the betrothed of corn come. May the female guardian of the Maya come. May the messenger of God come. May the rain come down. Jose Díaz Bolio. The next book was written in the Mayan language by Feliciano Sanchez Chan, who is very much alive. He's a friend of mine, and he writes in Mayan. He was born in Sheha, which is a very tiny village near Ticul. He won the Ipsy Prize for poetry written in the Maya language, as well as many, many other prizes. As I said, he's a good friend. He's a promoter of culture. He's been part of popular culture here in Yucatán. He's a tireless advocate of the Mayan language. When I say tireless, he's at every event, every book show, he's on radio, he's on TV, he goes to Mexico City promoting the Mayan language. Some people seem to think that Mayan is a dead language. It is by no means dead. There are over 6 million people who speak Mayan here in the Yucatán Peninsula, Guatemala, parts of Belize, parts of Honduras. So it's very, the Mayan, the language family of Mayan is spoken by almost 6 million people. You can take a Mayan, might not be able to translate, or might not be able to understand Maya, some parts of Guatemala, but still, it's under the same language family. But any of you who have been here for a while know it's pretty widely spoken in Yucatán, especially on the country. Feliciano writes very contemporary poetry. What I like about this book, this was published in the United States, that I unfortunately don't have copies of this for sale. It's been sold out. It may still be on Amazon. But I like the design of this book. They have the English on in one half, Feliciano Sanchez Chan, 7 Dreams, translated by Jonathan Harrington, and then you flip it over, and it has the Maya, Upi Wayak by Feliciano Sanchez Chan, and then the Maya writing man. So it's kind of a unique design. I was very happy with that. Side by side, face to face, translations are nice, but this is something a little bit different. And how many of us can speak Maya in English? Right, compare. I'll give you a brief introduction to Feliciano's work. As I said, it's contemporary poetry. And we'll do a little experiment here. And for those of you who are actually Mayan speakers, please don't make fun of my pronunciation. But I'm going to give you a little taste of what the Mayan language sounds like. Some people have asked me, not people here, but people in the United States, is it like Spanish? No. Nothing like Spanish. Absolutely no connection between the two. But this one, I'll give it a try. It's called Chan Lo. You may know those words. Chan means small, little. Lo means flower. Chan Lo. Maatun akawich Chan Petin. Bashubi tutan akin panal Chan Lo. Satul ayot yetel tambal. Beshan umbundi aleo. Watu nashush akabila jubne. Watu namol ayasil amatsab. Watu nacha sara bodo. Wapatak tuchtal acham atuchini. Gracias. In English, little flower. The butterfly cannot decide what to do faced with your beauty, little flower. Stung by your gorgeous radiance and the color of your petals, it can't decide whether to drink the honey of your womb or perhaps collect the pollen from your eyelashes. It doesn't know whether to just be delighted in your fresh shade or remain contemplating your beauty. This poem is called Your Name. One day, I told you how important you are in my life, and beneath the shelter of Mother Moon, you talked with me all night long. One day I fell down and called out to you so you could help me get back on my feet. And you taught me which tree is best for making a cure. One night, lost in the woods, I cried out so that you would find me. In the darkness on our return, you taught me to read the language of the stars. Today, if you are not in my life, if I have fallen to the ground, or I'm lost in the woods, it will be enough just to remember your name. We want to clarify that I did not translate this book directly from the Mayan language. I used what we call a bridge language. Every Mayan poet, every Mayan writer always publishes in a bilingual edition with the original Mayan and usually the writer's own translation into Spanish for obvious reasons. The audience for a purely Mayan book would be quite small. When it comes out in a bilingual edition, then it's more than double the audience for the book. So I use the bridge language of Spanish to translate the book, which leads me back to the problem that I introduced in the beginning, and that is removing the text from the culture, from the original culture. In the case of translating a book from Mayan, first of all, it's taken from Mayan and putting it into Spanish, which has already moved it out of its cultural context. Then I come along and take the Spanish and take it even further into English. So you're 2 steps removed from the original context of the poem. luckily, I had Feliciano Sanchez Chan to help me go over my translation and to explain the cultural context of certain things. The Maya are very fond of wordplay, double meaning, often double meaning with a sexual innuendo. That's widely used in contemporary Mayan poetry, and I suspect throughout Mayan history. They are very earthy people, and they are not Puritans by any means. What was interesting about this poem is after I had translated it, let me read it to you first. It's called Who Will Find Me? At times I hear the sad sound of a conch. At times I hear the moan of some horned creature. At times the echo of cannon's blast, or the prayerful supplication from the hands of some brother. The first thing that crosses my mind, dear Lord, is who is lost in the jungle? I leave this dream and see myself all alone in the middle of the labyrinth of the big city. And I ask myself, Lord, who will find me? When I went over this poem with Feliciano, he opened up my mind to, the poem reads well in English, and it's completely understandable. But there's a context that he explained to me, and that is there are certain protocols that a Mayan hunter who's out in the jungle uses in case he gets lost. And first of all, he might carry a conch shell that he's made into a kind of horn. So when he's lost, he blows on this shell. At times I hear the sad sound of a conch. Then the next image he uses is the moan of some horned creature. If no one has responded to the lost hunter, then he opens his shotgun and takes the shell out, and then blows into that shotgun again to make a sound so that somebody will locate it. If that doesn't work, of course, he puts the shell back in and a cannon blast. Bow! I'm lost. And then finally, if none of that works, then he says, the supplication from the hands of some brother. Then he puts his hands together like this and makes the sound that you would make that you would do that. Just hope that someone will listen to him or hear him. Well, I never would have known any of that, and I'm not sure what I could have done except put a lot of footnotes in this, and I don't like footnotes in poetry. But listen to the poem again and see how that changes it somewhat. Who will find me? At times I hear the sad sound of a conch. At times I think I hear the moan of some horned creature. At times the echo of a cannon's blast, or the prayerful supplication from the hands of some brother. The first thing that crosses my mind, dear Lord, is who is lost in the jungle? I leave this dream and see myself all alone in the middle of the labyrinth of the big city, and I ask myself, Lord, who will find me? Let's see how much time we have. Quite a bit. But you can see how that adds a certain layer to the poem that I'm not quite sure how I could have, as I said, footnotes are the only way, and I absolutely abhor footnotes in a book of poetry. Let's see what else we have here. This one's called Road to the Milpa. Pardon? Yeah. This one's called Road to the Milpa. Milpa, I believe you know that word. It means a cornfield. Again, that's the translation of the word is cornfield, but a milpa is a cornfield, but it's a sacred place for the Maya. It's not just a field with your tractor and it's a sacred place where corn is planted, because corn is sacred to the Maya. Road to the milpa. Come with me, my lovely. Take me by the hand, and we will walk this path together, shaking the dew with the fleeting shoes of our feet. Let me embrace you. Let me breathe your breath and perhaps kiss your lips beneath the set shade of some tree, and maybe bristle the skin of the fresh grass. Let me recollect your body with the touch of my kisses. We will hand over our happiness for this beautiful morning, and later, we will begin the work. I have a funny story that I told Feliciano about. I lived in rural Yucatán for 20 years. I only recently moved to Merida. I lived out in North Hacienda, 3 kilometers back from the jungle. And I had my family living with me. And the man and the woman would get up in the morning and they have to put their machetes and they would have to go out to the mill to work. And yet they seemed so happy and like they were anxious to get out there. Wow, people were pretty enthusiastic about their work. This is wonderful. Then I read this poem, about what they're going to do and later get to work. And I thought, aha! Now I understand how they can be so anxious and happy to be going off to work in a cornfield. So he thought that was pretty hilarious. Anyway, that's Feliciano. Unfortunately, I do not have copies of this for sale, but I believe it is still available on Amazon. Now I would like to get to my original work. This is my book, Lift Up a Stone, The Gospel According to John. And it's translated, it's also in a bilingual edition. It was translated by Fernando de la Cruz. Some of you know him. He used to be on the board of directors here at the Merida English Library. He's now at the University of California, Irvine. He's a Yucatecan. He's now at the University of California, Irvine, studying for his doctorate degree. He translated this in Spanish, and it's in a beautiful bilingual edition, published by Evolutionistas Editorial in Hidalgo, Mexico. I'll read you. It's a pretty arrogant thing to do, the Gospel according to Jonathan. What I've done is I've taken the Gospel of Matthew and I've rewritten it in modern terms and set the acts of Christ within the present-day Middle East among the conflict with Israel and Palestine. Of course, that's where Christ spent his career, in Palestine and Israel. But I put him and his apostles in the present day, in contemporary postmodern language. Let me just read a couple of things from the translator's introduction that explains what I'm doing. All poems are dramatic monologues. A dramatic monologue is when you take on the voice of another character. It could be a historical character. In this case, it's characters from the Bible, and you speak in their voice. All these poems are dramatic monologues told from the point of view of main players in Matthew, or from minor or invented characters. I have characters that are familiar from the Bible, from the Gospel, as well as characters I've made up and placed within my own Gospel. They attempt to capture the humanity of these characters that is so often glossed over by conventional religious doctrine. in Harrington's sonnets, they're 14-line poems written in iambic pentameter. In Harrington's sonnets, Jesus, his mother, and his disciples are, above all else, flesh and blood, men and women. That's what I wanted to do with my gospel. And I think it's legitimate to write your own gospel. After all, the original gospels were not based on contemporary eyewitness accounts. They too were based on documents that were almost 100 years old at the time. Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, whoever those people were, wrote their version. So I think it's fair enough to write a modern version. He goes on to say, in these 40 postmodern blank verse sonnets, blank verse is unrhymed iambic pentameter, without getting into a lot of technical things. Iambic pentameter are 10-syllable lines, with each syllable being unaccented, accented, unaccented, accented. Da, 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 da. It's a very common rhythm in the English language. Which is another thing. I think Feliciano, I think Fernando Fair de la Cruz does a wonderful job. He admits that that particular rhythm or meter is not common in the Spanish language, but he does a very good job of reproducing it sometimes, and then sometimes he says it's simply not possible, and he uses free verse. In these 40 postmodern blank verse sonnets, Harrington recreates the voices of characters such as a friend soldier, Longinus, the wife of Pilate, the thief's sister, even the dog, as well as various unnamed witnesses to the miracles and wonders of the good Rabbi Hacienda ben Joseph. In doing so, he returns the Hebrew names to the biblical characters, recreates life in a territory wounded by war, and endows those who continue to suffer in the Holy Land with flesh and bone and voice and face. I was influenced when I was researching both, reading the Gospels, but also researching different theologians. I think what contemporary Christians seem to forget is that Jesus was a Jew, and all of his followers were Jewish. And so we've gotten sort of to the point where it makes it sound like Jesus was a Christian. He was not. He was working within a tradition, in the Jewish tradition. So I decided, I was very much influenced by a book called Rabbi Jesus, who explains the historical and political situation that was happening at that time. Of course, the Romans were a imperialistic nation that had dominated the Jewish people in that part of the Middle East, and they were in conflict with one another. That's the historical background of the life of Christ. It was a revolutionary period. So I returned. I used Hebrew names to name the characters of the Bible. And this commentary by Don Schliemann says, with Lift Up the Stone, Jonathan Harrington has created a version of the Gospel of Matthew that is faithful to the original as well as completely original at the same time. The message of the Gospel is recast in our contemporary setting. There are miracles as well as suicide bombings and mortar shells, donkeys and jet fighters of the clouds above the Gaza Strip, and a faithful dog steals a scene at the Last Supper. Expertly translated, Ferre Cruz has carefully created Spanish originals that retain all the charm and music of the English. I hope that you find that The first part of the book was probably one of the last poems that I wrote. This book took a long time to write. I did not sit down and write it all at once. I wrote it as things occurred to me. So really, some of these first poems I published in magazines were published 20 years ago. So, and the last poem was written a couple of months ago. Published, so it was quite a long journey. But the first poem in the book is perhaps the last poem I wrote. If you ever had the misfortune of reading the very first chapter of Matthew, it's this long list of names. You know, somebody begot somebody begot somebody begot somebody. And when I was confronted with that, I thought, well, what am I going to do with that? I want to make a point out of that. And I did. And I came up with this genealogy of Christ. All those fathers, 40 generations back to Abraham. The roll call spins my head like a windmill turning in hot air. Forgive me, please, if this is blasphemy. It's not, at least not meant to be. But so many names and so few faces. What was Hezron like? Did he love Ron? What did Asa eat for breakfast every day? 3 mothers on the entire list? Tamar, Ruth, and Mary? The rest? Not worth mentioning? Not Perez, Nosham, Basar, Jotham, Azor? Were they good dads? Were guys like me who did their best, but not enough? You understand? I know my father's name, but not the man. This one's called Tools. Of course, we remember that Jesus was an apprentice to his father. They were both carpenters. And this one I call Tools. Spoken from the point of view of his father, Joseph. Son, I wonder if you could ever have thought those many, many years ago, when you played around the shop, then learned to work with skill, the sacred tools of your predestined trade, the weight of hammers and the weight of nails, 10 penny for the cypress trunks and trimming tacks to beautify the oaken strips we fixed along the handmade furnishings. I wonder if you ever once imagined that years from then you'd be spread eagled on 2 cedar planks, the soldiers bent above you, intent on their wicked carpentry, the hammers of our trade gripped in their fists as they drove nails into your hands and feet and wrists. This one is called Sleeping. This is from the point of view of a character that is purely imaginary, or I've invented. It's not, she doesn't appear in the gospel. But in the Gospel of Matthew, Jesus comes into a town and people say, this woman's died. Can you come to our house? So he goes to the house and he says, she's not dead, she's sleeping. And this is told from the point of view of a young woman who's in love with this woman. It's called Sleeping. No one today recalls my cameo, a walk-on in the second act. I was the girl coming from the well, a jug of water balanced on my head, when you approached the warlord's house, where the girl lay stretched out in bed. I blocked the door with my jug. I loved that girl more than any man, and I thought I could protect her. So I stood, keeping the curious away. Step aside, you said. Your love is not dead. She's sleeping. All the people laughed, but you touched her, and she rose and looked at me quietly as I stood there weeping. This one is called Eat, based on the event in the gospel where Jesus goes outside of the city and 5,000 people follow him to hear his lectures and his sermons. according to the gospel, he then feeds 5,000 people with loaves and fishes. This is told from the point of view of someone who has followed him out there. It's called Eat. I met you once, though I don't suppose you would remember me. Who knows? You had a thing for whores and drunks and guys like me who could never peg ourselves into the squares set out for us. I just woke up, sandals full of dirt from sleeping off a drunk, and joined that band of 5,000 who followed you to a lonely place outside of town. I heard you teach and do amazing things, but I was shaking by the time I knelt before you, down on the grass. I need a drink, Rabbi, a skin of wine. You shook your head, handed me a piece of fish, bread. Take this and eat instead. This one's called Milagro. How's our time doing? Getting close. This is called Milagro, miracle. I want to dedicate this to Dr. Georgina Ficto Garcia, who's with us today. She's an eye doctor, and she has performed some pretty miraculous things, particularly on children with cancer of the eye. This is called Miracle. I was there that noon. You thumbed the blind man's eyes apart. I saw him squint against the switchblades of sunlight and take his first long look around through milky eyes at leopards hobbling on their stumps, digits missing on the hands held out to touch the roads. The legless woman, the man with half a face, the maimed, bruised, tortured world at your feet. Was it a blessing that you gave him, or a curse? I wonder if he ever wished, as he lay awake at night, gazing at the sky shot through with bullet holes of starlight, that you performed your miracle that afternoon in the hills above the Sea of Galilee on someone else's site. I'll end it with this poem that, and then maybe if you have some questions, comments, we could have a few minutes to do that. This poem is called The 13th Apostle. In the canonical gospel, there are 12 apostles. In the gospel according to Jonathan, there are 13 apostles. The 13th apostle. No dog has ever been as blessed as me, lying beneath the table at your last meal. I licked your sandaled feet, and you scratched my stomach with a strap behind your heel, and fed me scraps of bread and meat. I'm not remembered in any of the books, not Mark, nor Luke, nor Matthew, not even John. I suppose they didn't think that dogs have souls, but I was there. I'd sniff the double agent out. I could smell betrayal on Judas' feet. I tried to warn you with a bark. I think you understood, but you ignored me. And so I settled back and just enjoyed your sandals rubbing gently on my belly. We have books for sale here. Lift Up the Stone by Jonathan Harrington, and Praise for My Land by Jose Díaz Bolio, translated by Jonathan Harrington. Each book is 200 pesos, and you can consult the doctor if you want to buy one. Questions, observations, comments? I know that's always puts people on the spot. Yes.
First, I love this presentation. I'm new to Merida. It just charms me on many levels. Second question is, or the question is, in doing the Gospel of John, did you at all consult the apocryphal Gospels, like the Gospel
Yes.
of Thomas,
Yes.
and the Gospel
In
of Mary
fact,
Magdalene?
yes, very good question. In fact, the title comes from the comes from an apocryphal.
Oh, lift up the stone.
Yeah, Lift Up the Stone is a title that it was taken from the Gospel. Where's the Gospel of Thomas that you mentioned? Yeah, the Gospel of Thomas was just really they're what? They're just quotations attributed to Jesus. They were thrown out by the council that put the final gospel. But Jesus is said to have said, "Split a piece of wood, I am there. Lift up the stone, and you will find me there."
Oh.
The Gospel of Thomas, witness Judas Thomas, which leads us to wonder if maybe the Jesus and his apostles were more like animists who believed that God exists in stones, exists in trees, exists in based on that, you would think that was more the direction they were moving in theologically. But I'm very glad you asked that question because, yes, the title comes from the Gospel of Thomas, which is not included in the canonical Gospels, Lift Up the Stone. Yes?
Well, I'm just delighted. I just love what you've been reading and the way you've been reading. I'm curious to know a little more about your sources for the gospel according to you. My parents read Greek to each other every morning from the New Testament mostly. And my dad was also a student of Hebrew. So I'm wondering, did you have any contact with the classics?
Well, only through, I have studied Greek, but modern Greek, and I did not consult Greek or Hebrew texts. However, I read books of theologians who explained some of the particularly words used in the English gospel and their origin and how that word could mean a variety of different things. So the people that put together the canonical gospels, they were picking and choosing what they wanted it to mean, which every translator does. But the most influential book, I would say, and I can't remember the author's name, but it's called the Rabbi Jesus, and it explains not only the historical events at that time are fascinating, the conflict between the Jews and the Roman Empire, and the whole political situation that was very precarious for someone like Jesus. He was going against the